Hi, sixth grade. This is Miss Camp, and this is part 2 of our review for what we learned last week during language arts class. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. So in the last lesson, we talked about how, remember, let me back up. We are doing something called sentence. What's that word? That means we take the big picture and break it into little pieces and see how they all fit together. I'll start writing it and you see if you can remember. And now I could write analyze, but I'm writing analysis. Sentence analysis. And so we use this to look at a sentence and to figure out why do we need every word in the sentence that we have, what words are missing, when do we know if the sentence is finished and we can put a period. So we need to remember that every sentence needs 2 parts. And I use red and green. Do you remember what the first part is called? I'll start writing it and you see if you can remember. The subject. And what do we call the second part of the sentence? I'll start writing it and you see if you can remember. That's not a very good I, is it? The predicate. That's kind of a fun word to say. Try saying it. I'll say it first and then you say it. My turn, predicate. Your turn. My turn, predicate. Your turn. Well, let's look back at our subject. Remember, each part is important. Each part has to be there so that we can put a period at the end. Each part answers a question. What question does the subject answer? What did I just say? What question does the subject, that's right, what question does the subject answer? It answers the question, what or who is this whole sentence about? And remember, if a question begins with the word what or who, your answer is going to be a noun, or if you want to use a word to take the place of the noun, you can use a pronoun. As long as you have given us a clue before about who that pronoun is talking about. Okay, let's look at the predicate. What's the most important word in the predicate? And it comes first. That is the verb. Okay, all right. And a verb can answer the question, the subject is doing what? And remember, the most important part of that question is do. If you are doing something, you are doing an action, then it's an action verb. But maybe your sentence is just making a statement or giving us some information about something and there's no action happening. Then we say the subject is being what? And the important part of this question is be. And we would use the verb to be, which is, do you remember that verb? It would be the is, are, was, were, will be. Okay, those are all the verb to be. All right, let me clean some of this up because we did that in the last lesson and not for today's lesson. I'm going to also get rid of pronoun. Okay, so we have a noun in the subject, we have a verb in the predicate. Remember that we can have other nouns in the sentence if the other nouns are not the one doing the action or not answering the question of what or who the whole sentence is about, right? They're not the subject. Do you remember what word we use? We say that noun is being an object in the sentence. Okay, that's our review from our last lesson. Now we're going to be looking more at the predicate and asking what other questions can the predicate answer? It can answer the question when or where or how. So let's look at some examples. All right, I'm going to write down for my sentence. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what examples I used. How about Pablo? You know, I think that I'm going to type it. That might be faster. All right, Pablo ate breakfast today. All right, so Pablo ate breakfast today. All right, so let's analyze our sentence. Let's start with the subject. Who is the sentence about? Okay, it's about Pablo, so he's our subject. And he's a noun, he's a person. That means the whole rest of the sentence is our predicate. The first word, I'm going to highlight green, that's the verb. That's what he's doing, he's eating. It's an action verb. We can ask what are some questions we could ask about that and only use the information in this sentence? For example, I could say, what did Pablo eat? Well, listen to that question. What did Pablo eat? What was the first word in my question? What? And do you remember? The answer to a what question is going to be a noun. And what did he eat? He ate breakfast. Breakfast is food. It's a thing. It's a noun. It answers the question, what? But the breakfast is not eating Pablo, right? The breakfast is not doing the eating. The breakfast is not first in the sentence. So the breakfast is not the subject of the sentence. It's an object in the sentence. There can be nouns all over your sentence. They will either be the subject or an object. It's very easy. You just ask yourself, who is doing the eating? That's your subject. And it usually comes first. That's Pablo. Any other noun that's not eating the breakfast, that's not doing the eating, that's going to be an object. So breakfast is an object noun. What's another question I could ask if I want to write? Let me see if I want to, whoops, I don't want that. If I want to write a question and I want the answer, I already know the answer. If I want the answer to be today, okay, that's going to be the answer to my question. What would the question be? Okay, here's all the information. Pablo ate breakfast today. How can I turn those words into a question? And the answer is today. It would be, my A. All right, I'm going to say, when did Pablo eat breakfast? Question mark. Oops, hang on. All right, here's my question. When did Pablo eat breakfast? So this is what I'm looking at right here. See my little red dot? When did Pablo eat breakfast? Okay, the answer is today, right? Because it tells us Pablo ate breakfast today. So when you look at this question, what's the first word in the question? What color should I use? I'll use blue. It's when. Okay. The 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, and how, those are question words. They can go at the beginning of a question. If you have a question that begins with what or who, the answer is going to be a noun. If you have a question that begins with when, and you can answer it in one word, we call that, the part of speech is not a noun, it's called an adverb. That's what we're going to talk about next, okay? So let's look at another example. Instead of Pablo ate breakfast today, let's say Pablo ate breakfast in the kitchen. Ooh, I don't want to say that one. That's later. He's going to eat breakfast in the kitchen later. Let's see. All right, we're going to leave Pablo for a minute. No, we still use Pablo, don't we? He's our imaginary student in our class. Okay, Pablo swam underwater. Okay, there's going to be our sentence. So let's analyze our sentence. First question, who is this sentence about? It's the first word. Who is doing the swimming? Okay, it's Pablo. He's the subject. The whole rest is our predicate. The first word is our verb. This is an action verb. Okay, there's swimming going on. That's an action. Pablo swam. But we have another word. right here, underwater, okay? Now, what question does underwater answer? If I were to put my question here and my answer here, and I want the answer to be underwater, how can I turn that sentence into a question? So the answer is underwater. All righty, let's see if we can do it. If you remember, I'll start writing it and you see if you can remember. Here's the question. Where did Pablo swim? Pablo swam underwater. The answer is underwater. In our question, what was the very first word? What's the question word? It is where. If you ask a question or see a question that begins with where, and you can answer it in one word, that is going to be an adverb. So an adverb is one word all by itself that can answer the question where the action happened or when the action happened. Or one more, here's the last one. An adverb can do these three things. It can tell us when it's it gives us more information about the verb, especially an action verb. It can tell us more about where that action is happening, when it's happening, or how it's happening. So if I have a sentence that says, let's see, Pablo ran fast. Okay, let's look at our sentence. Who is it about? Pablo. He's the subject. The rest of the sentence is the predicate. The first word is the verb, ran. So there's action happening in the sentence. And then we have fast. So we're not saying Pablo is fast. When we talked about that yesterday, if we say Pablo is fast, then fast is describing Pablo. Pablo is a noun. A word that describes a noun is an adjective. So it's tricky, a little bit different. We're here talking about Pablo is running. There's action happening. And so here we want to know, how is he running? Tell us more information about the running. And so here, this word is telling us about the running. We're saying, how did he run? Okay, so the question here, I just gave you the answer. The question is, how did Pablo run? And this question begins with the word how. And the answer is fast. And it is answering the question, how, with one word, and so it's an adverb. When we have one word in a sentence, usually comes right before or right after the verb, that is answering the question, when, where, or how, then it's an adverb. It's giving us more information about the verb. Notice in that word adverb, you can actually see this word verb right in it. That's a big hint. That's a clue. Okay, so if you find a question that begins with when, where, or how, and you can answer it with one word, and we're talking about the action, more information about the action, we're probably looking at an adverb. But a lot of times in a sentence, we want to answer that question with more than one word. We don't want to use just one word. For example, instead of saying Pablo ate breakfast today, we could say, let's put it over here. We could say Pablo ate breakfast in the morning. Okay. So let's look at this. Let's analyze our sentence. Who is it about? Pablo. The whole rest of the sentence is the predicate. The first word is ate. What do we call ate? That's the verb. And this is an action verb because he's doing something. So Pablo did what? Is doing what? Eating, right? So we also see there's an object noun because breakfast is a thing and it's answering the question, what did Pablo eat breakfast? But then we have this other part here, and I'm going to change to, I use pink for this part. All right, so if I was to ask you the question, well, let me actually write the question first. If I want to ask the question, when did Pablo eat breakfast? Okay, so if my question is, when did Pablo eat breakfast? Pablo ate breakfast in the morning. When did Pablo eat breakfast? The answer would be right here, in the morning. Actually, I'm just going to use a pen. Okay, these three words. I have to say all three of them. I cannot just say in. When did Pablo eat breakfast? In doesn't make sense. When did Pablo eat breakfast? In the doesn't make sense. We have to say, not in that, in the morning. All three of these words together answer the question. Well, when we have a group of words, that means more than one word, that kind of go together, like we have to stick them together with glue, and all together in a group, they're going to do one job, answer one question. We call that group of words, does anyone remember? A phrase. So remember the PH makes the F sound. So this is phrase, phrase. Try saying it, phrase. What is a phrase? It's a group of words, that means more than one, at least two, that go together, just stick them together with glue, put a space between them, but they got to go together. I'm going to put a circle around them, and they will do the job of answering one question. A phrase does not have a subject and a verb in it. A phrase is not a sentence. So here my answer is made up of three words that does not have a subject and a verb in it. So it's a phrase, but it's a special kind of phrase. So the special kind of phrase that this is called, if I can get it all written down here, what color should I use? I don't know if I can get it all in. Preposition. Preposition, say preposition, hold up 4 fingers. Preposition, 4 syllables. Preposition. But I'm going to add 2 letters, A-L. Prepositional. Now you need 5 fingers. Prepositional. Say it again. It's fun. Prepositional. Prepositional. So a prepositional phrase is what we call a group of words that answers the question when or where. The group of words has to go together. It's just a phrase. There's no subject and a verb. And the very first word, which is this one right here, I'll highlight it. This one right here, in, is going to be a preposition. I feel like my whiteboard is getting kind of messy. Let's clean it up. Okay, so prepositional phrase is going to be a group of words that is going to begin. First word right here has to be a preposition. The preposition is the line leader. It's the line leader of the phrase. Now, there are many prepositions. In fact, it's a good idea to memorize as many prepositions as you can, because then if you see one in the sentence, you can say, oh, I know what that is. It's a preposition, okay? Which means it's a line leader, which means there's going to be a group of words together that are going to answer the question when or where or which one. Okay, so examples of prepositions, here's a few. In, on, at, with, under, around, of, before, after, and a lot more. So these are prepositions. If you see one, then look to see what comes after it. Because if it's a prepositional phrase, then the very last word in the phrase is going to be a noun. And a prepositional phrase is not the subject of a sentence. It's not answering the question, what is this sentence about? Or who is this sentence about? That means this noun cannot be the subject of the sentence. And if it's not the subject, it has to be an object. Okay, so a prepositional phrase starts with a preposition and it ends with a noun. And altogether, we call it a prepositional phrase, and it answers, most of the time it answers the question when or where. Most of the time it gives us more information about the verb, about the action, where is it happening, when is it happening, but a prepositional phrase can also be used to give us more information about a noun as well and tell us which one are we talking about. But so it's important to be able to recognize a prepositional phrase. As soon as you find one, kind of put a circle around it in your mind and have it all stick together. It needs to stay together. So let's do an example here. When did Pablo eat breakfast? Well, what's the first question? What's the first word in that question? When. So if you're answering the question when with more than one word, it's probably a prepositional phrase. Let's look at our other examples. We had Pablo swam underwater. We could say Pablo swam in the pool. And our question would still be, where did Pablo swim? But our answer would not be one word. It would be in the pool or in the lake or in the ocean. That's three words that you have to stick them together to give the answer of where did Pablo swim. The first word is in, that's a preposition, and the last word is lake, pool, ocean, and that's a place or a thing, so that's a noun. Let's look at let me go back and look at our class, was number 7, and let's see what else we did. So we went on to compound. Oh, I wanted to give this example. Let me just show this example real quick. In this first one, the dogs ran around the house. Subject is the dogs. Ran around the house is the predicate. Ran is the verb. If our question is, where did the dogs run? We would say around the house. That's a prepositional phrase, and around is a preposition. House is the object of that prepositional phrase. It's a noun. But we could also just have a sentence that says, the dogs ran around. In this sentence, around is not acting as a preposition because it's answering the question, where did the dogs run, all by itself with just one word. So there are some prepositions that can act like an adverb if they are all by themselves. So all you have to do if you see a word like around is ask yourself, is there a noun coming after it or not? If it can answer the question when or where all by itself in just one word, it's being an adverb. If there's a noun after it and we need to include that in the phrase, where did the dogs run around the house, then here around is being a preposition. Okay, let's go back to our page here. I think I'm going to show you one more example, and then we're going to stop this lesson. We had also talked about compound, that word compound subjects, compound predicates, compound sentences, but I will let that be lesson number 3. So I will take what we did in 2 days and move it into 3 video lessons. But one thing I did not show you, so here's a bonus for you if you're watching the video, I did not show this in class, is a sentence like this one. Let's see. The birds in the nest are chirping. Okay. So let's look at this sentence. Let's analyze it. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay. So we need a subject and a predicate. Okay. Well, this is tricky because we say that the subject comes before the verb. We say it comes first in the sentence, and it's what the whole sentence is about. And it's a noun, but look, there are 2 nouns in the sentence. There's birds and there's nest. So which one is the subject? Well, there's a couple things you can think about to help you with this. Sometimes it's easier to find the predicate first. Well, my computer was about to turn off, so I had to change seats. All right, so let's look here. We got the birds in the nest are chirping. So what I said is sometimes it's easier to find the predicate first or to find the verb first. So what is the action happening in this sentence? Are chirping. Now, chirping is an action verb. Do you notice how there's an ing on the end of this action verb? Do you remember what I said in the last lesson? That if you have an action verb with ing and the action is happening in the sentence, we can't just say the bird's chirping. We need to say, we need a helping verb. And that's what this is, the are. Am, is, are, was, were, will, be. The verb to be, the being verb, can help out when we have an ing action verb. So both of these words together are the verb, 2-word verb, are chirping. Now it's a little bit easier. Now that we found the verb, it's easier to find the subject. We can say, okay, who is chirping? Or what is chirping? We have our 2 choices. It's either going to be the birds or the nest. Does it make sense? You might think, oh, the nest is the noun right before. It must be the nest. But ask yourself the question, is the nest chirping? Is the nest doing the chirping? A nest is made of twigs and sticks and straw. It's not living. It actually can't sing or make noise or really do anything. It's not alive. So the nest is not going to be chirping. So that doesn't make sense. So who is doing the chirping? It's the birds. Okay, the birds are the ones doing the chirping. So what's this nest doing, right? It's coming before are. It cannot be part of the predicate because the predicate begins with the verb, which means this whole thing here is part of the subject. All right, I'm getting a little bit messy here. This whole thing is part of the subject, okay? That's the complete subject. We can take a sentence and divide it into just 2 parts, a complete subject and a complete predicate, a red box and a green box. But the most important part of the subject is the noun that's doing the action, okay? This whole sentence is not about the nest, it's about the birds. So the birds here, that's the subject, that's the noun subject, the subject noun. We sometimes call this the simple subject. The simple subject would be just the subject noun, the noun in the subject that we say is the subject noun. Okay, That would be the simple subject. This whole thing we would call the complete subject. I'm writing with my finger and it's a little bit messy. Okay, that would be the complete subject. But the simple subject is most important. That's going to be the subject noun. That's the birds. So the birds are the one doing the chirping. We could have a sentence, the birds are chirping, but we might want to know which birds are we talking about. So we might have the question, which ones? Which birds are chirping? There's lots of birds outside. There's some on the ground. There's some on the water. There's some in the tree. Which ones are we talking about? And so we use those three words together in the nest to tell us which birds are we talking about. It's answering the question, which ones? It's answering an adjective question, because an adjective gives more information about a noun. Birds, they're a noun. Okay, they're a thing, they're a noun. But we want more information about them. We want to know which ones. Well, an adjective gives us more information about a noun. It can answer the question, what kind, like the ones that are blue, how many, 3, or which ones, the ones that are in the nest. But we're answering that question with 3 words. That's more than one. It's a phrase. And notice what it begins with. It begins with a preposition. And what comes after a preposition? A noun. And so let's find our noun, nest. And it has the word the in front of it. That tells us it's a noun. So we have a phrase, in the nest. That's a prepositional phrase. And remember I said that the noun inside a prepositional phrase has to be an object. It cannot be a subject. So if you find a preposition, look for a noun after it, put a circle around it in your mind and tell yourself this cannot be the subject of the sentence. A prepositional phrase is never the subject of a sentence. It is there to give you more information about either a noun or a verb. With a verb, it can tell you when it's happening or where it's happening. But with a noun, it's probably going to tell you which one are we talking about. Okay, so in the nest is a prepositional phrase. Those 3 words have to stick together. Begins with a preposition, ends with a noun that is an object noun. And together, they're going to tell us about a noun. It can be a noun in the subject part of the sentence, or it can be a noun in the predicate part of the sentence, because nouns can be everywhere. The trick is to figure out which one is the subject of the sentence. If there's a preposition in front of it, you can cross that out. In fact, you could just cover this whole thing up and you would still have a sentence. The birds are chirping. We did not talk about the difference between a complete subject and a simple subject. But just remember with a sentence, you can slice it in 2. You can have a red box and a green box. That's the complete subject and the complete predicate. Inside those 2 boxes, the most important words is the subject noun and the verb. The subject noun we call the simple subject, and the verb we call the simple predicate. Okay, so when we look at this, for example, our complete predicate is ate breakfast in the morning. The simple predicate would be just the verb ate. Okay. All right. I think that is going to be it for today, for this lesson. And in the last one, we will look at compound. Okay, that's making a fancier sentence. All right, let me stop sharing my iPad. Thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye.